I never thought paying the last installment of my son's mortgage would mark the beginning of my own solitude. There I was in Port Sarasota, canvas bag on my shoulder, sunscreen inside, passport in hand, heart beating like I was 20 again. It was August 7th, the day our family cruise was supposed to sail, or so I believed until my phone buzzed. "You're not coming with us on the cruise. Veronica prefers it to be family only." A message. From Nolan, my son. I read it 3 times. Family only. As if I weren't part of that anymore. I looked up. From where I stood at the terminal, I could see them on the deck already. Nolan and Veronica waving, smiling like a magazine ad. Not a goodbye. A declaration. I stood there frozen, the kind of stillness that isn't shock but recognition. The kind that tells you a chapter has just slammed shut. Around me, people were boarding with laughter and luggage. I had a ticket in my purse, my name printed in blue ink, useless now. And what hurt most wasn't being left behind. It was knowing I had finished paying their mortgage just a month ago, my name still on the deed. The same woman who signed as co-owner because they couldn't qualify yet. The same mother who baked carrot cake every Sunday hoping her son would visit hungry. The same fool who welcomed Veronica with a smile, even when she looked at me like I spoke a different language. Now, I was the inconvenience. I went home with dry eyes. I don't cry anymore over betrayals dressed as preferences. I just feel that old sting in the chest, the one you ignore when you love too much. I slipped off my shoes at the door, the way I always do, and right there I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a verdict. That night I made chamomile tea, my small ritual against storms. The steam blurred my glasses as I opened the folder where I keep the house documents, the deed, the transfers, the notary's seal, all still under my name. And as the water trembled inside the cup, something in me settled. It wasn't pain, it wasn't anger. It was clarity, cold and perfect, like glass. Veronica had been erasing me for years. First it was, "You talk too loud at dinner." Then, "Your laugh is embarrassing." Later, Nolan started echoing her lines, "Mom, you're too intense." But my checks, those were always welcome. That night I understood. I wasn't part of their family. I was their emergency fund. While their cruise ship left the bay, posting photos of healing and self-care, I sat at my kitchen table, opened my notebook, and started writing. Not feelings, facts. Deed, under my name. Mortgage, paid with my pension. Total contributions, $240,000 in 5 years. I'd never done the math before because love doesn't count. It gives. But that night, love stopped financing disrespect. 2 days later, as their ship reached the Bahamas, my phone buzzed again. Not a call, a voice message. "Hey, Mom, Veronica's just been stressed. She wanted this trip to be special, intimate. But we love you. We'll talk when we're back." His voice sounded rehearsed, like a script written by someone else. "We love you." 3 hollow words wrapped in anesthesia. This time I didn't cry. I laughed, dry, quiet, final. They had taken my generosity for granted, my silence for weakness. I finished my tea, wiped the rim of the cup, and whispered, "If they want distance, they'll have it. Legal and complete." Outside, the ocean breeze swept through the open window, carrying the faint echo of gulls. Somewhere, their cruise was gliding over calm water. And here, in my quiet kitchen, justice had already started to move. The morning after the message, the house felt heavier than silence. I made coffee, but forgot to drink it. The air smelled of salt and paper, the kind of smell that follows a decision before it's spoken aloud. At 9:42, my phone blinked again. A new voice note, Nolan's name. I pressed play. "Mom, listen, we're not your charity, okay? We don't need your pity house or your money. Just let us live our lives." Veronica's voice was faint in the background, whispering something, and then Nolan again, softer, like an echo he didn't believe. "It's for the best." I replayed it once, then twice. The third time I laughed, Not loud, not bitter, just a sound that said, "Finally." The words didn't hurt, they confirmed the truth. Everything I had built had become invisible to them. I set the phone on the counter and opened my old expense notebook. The pages still smelled like ink and sea air. I began flipping through, tracing numbers with my fingertip. Insurance, utilities, taxes, every dollar, every quiet rescue. Next to the last entry I wrote, "Enough." For years I thought silence meant peace. Now I knew it could also mean evidence. The kettle clicked off. Steam rose and blurred the edges of the morning light. I poured the water slowly, the way I always did when I needed control. Then I picked up the phone again, replayed the message once more. "We're not your charity." I whispered back to the empty room. "Then pay your own mortgage." My reflection in the window didn't flinch. I looked older, sharper, awake. I took out a pen and began to write a list, not of what I'd lost, but what was still mine. The house, the deed, the right to decide. Every check I'd ever signed for them had my name under it, my trust printed in ink. Trust doesn't expire, but it can be revoked. By noon, the sun turned white against the window pane. The stillness was no longer pain. It was planning. I went to my desk, opened the drawer, and found the envelope I'd labeled legal. Inside was a card from Arthur Adler, my husband's old lawyer. He'd handled the paperwork when Rowan and I bought the villa. I stared at his handwriting, steady and exact. I dialed his number, then stopped halfway. Not yet. I needed one more look at the truth before bringing anyone else in. I sat back down, phone still in hand. Nolan's voice echoed again in my head. "We don't need your pity house." They had turned my help into humiliation. On the wall, a photo of Rowan hung above the dining table. Him smiling, sleeves rolled, hands covered in sand and mortar. He'd built that terrace brick by brick. "Protect what you built," he used to say. I could almost hear him. I looked around the room. The window frames he varnished, the teacup rack he carved. Every corner carried him, not them. That was the line Veronica never saw. This house wasn't a gift. It was legacy. My phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "Remember, Helen, we can manage without you." No greeting, no name, just venom disguised as independence. I smiled faintly. "Good," I said to no one. "Let's test that theory." I closed the notebook, set it beside the teacup, and opened the window wide. The ocean breeze entered like a quiet witness. Papers rustled on the table. One of them, the original mortgage statement, slid toward the edge. I caught it before it fell. That paper, more than the message, told the story. The debt was gone, paid in full, by me. Outside, a seagull screamed above the waves. It sounded like laughter, or warning. I pressed my palm flat over the document, feeling its weight. "You called me a charity," I murmured, "but you forgot. I own the donation box." Then I folded the paper neatly, slid it back into its envelope, and locked the drawer. The clock struck noon. The light shifted from gold to white. The air was steady, calm. There are moments when revenge doesn't begin with rage. It begins with a list, and I had just written mine. The third morning came with rain, soft but persistent. I sat by the kitchen window, tea untouched, watching drops slide down the glass like seconds leaving me behind. My phone buzzed once. A bank alert. I frowned. American Express. Password changed successfully. I hadn't changed anything. I tried logging in. Wrong password. Again, wrong. On the third attempt, the screen blinked red. Account locked for security reasons. I called Nolan. He answered on the second ring, voice half asleep, half guilty. "Mom? I just got a notice. Someone changed the password on my Amex." He paused. "Oh, right. Veronica did. She said you'd probably forget to update it after the cruise. So she changed my password?" "It's just temporary," he said quickly. "She feels anxious when you interfere. It stresses her out." I laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that carries no humor. Her anxiety seems selective. It doesn't stop her from spending what I earn. Mom, please, he sighed. You always make things sound accurate, I said. He went silent. I continued, calm but cold. Tell Veronica I'll stop interfering when she stops confusing my money for family therapy. Mom, he said sharply, don't be cruel. Cruel? I whispered. You texted me that I wasn't family. You watched her wave at me from the deck like I was the maid. But yes, I'm cruel because I noticed. He tried again. You're twisting things. She just wants peace. Peace doesn't come from exclusion, Nolan. It comes from respect. He breathed heavily, like a man trapped between loyalty and shame. She says you always try to control everything. Control? I said softly. I signed for your mortgage. I paid your taxes. I fed you when she was still learning to pronounce Chardonnay. If control means keeping you from drowning in your own bills, then yes, I'm guilty. He didn't answer, just silence and breathing. Anything else? I asked. She said you make her feel small. Then maybe she should stop standing on my floor, I replied. He hung up. I stared at the phone until the screen went black, reflecting my face. Older, yes, but not defeated. Something inside me shifted, a click I could almost hear. I poured my tea into the sink and reached for the folder of papers I kept in the cabinet. Mortgage statements, bank transfers, tax receipts. Every page, every number, every act of quiet love documented in ink. They thought I wouldn't remember. But I had every proof, signed and stamped. On one of the receipts, I had written a note years ago. For Nolan, so he never struggles like we did. I ran my thumb over those words until they faded under my skin. My phone buzzed again. This time a purchase alert. $628. Serenity Deck Spa. I smiled without warmth. Essential oils, I murmured. Paid with essential stupidity. The realization came clean, like lightning splitting the dark. This wasn't confusion. It was calculation. I walked to the mirror by the hall. For the first time, I didn't see a victim. I saw a witness, one who had finally stopped lying to herself. They had taken enough. My money, my trust, my place. Now they'd have to pay for underestimating me. I wiped the condensation off the mirror and said it aloud, steady and clear. I'll rest when you stop embarrassing our name. The house felt different after that. Lighter, quieter, expectant. Outside, the rain softened into mist. The sky was gray, but it wasn't heavy anymore. I brewed another cup of tea, stronger this time, no sugar, no sweetness. When I took the first sip, it tasted like resolve. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The air was thick with humidity and something else. Certainty. I dressed in silence, tied my hair back, and pulled out the brown envelope I hadn't opened in years. Inside were the papers Rowan and I signed when we bought the villa. His handwriting in the margins was still steady. Blue ink faded, but firm. By 8, I was sitting in the lobby of Adler and Pierce Law. The marble floors shone like calm water. A receptionist with a polite smile led me into Arthur's office. He stood when he saw me, same calm eyes, same precision in every movement. Helen, he said, shaking my hand. It's been a long time. Too long, I replied, but I think I'm finally here for the right reason. He gestured for me to sit. Rowan would be glad you came to me. What's going on? I placed the envelope on his desk. I need clarity. He raised an eyebrow. Clarity? Yes. My son and his wife seem to have forgotten who owns the house they live in. I'd like to remind them, quietly, legally, and permanently. Arthur smiled faintly, the kind of smile that says understood. He slipped on his glasses and opened the file. This is the original deed, I said. My husband and I are the sole owners. I never signed a transfer. They just moved in. He examined each document carefully, turning pages like evidence. Everything is still in your name, he said. Taxes, title, insurance. You're the only legal owner. So if I decided to sell it tomorrow? You wouldn't need anyone's permission. I nodded slowly. Good. He looked at me. What happened, Helen? I let out a quiet breath. My son told me I wasn't family. His wife said cruises were for real families. They've been using my accounts, my house, my patients. Arthur leaned back. And you've had enough. Not enough, I said. Just clarity. I don't want revenge. I want peace. And peace starts with boundaries. He studied me for a moment. You've always had a talent for restraint. Restraint is just patience in disguise, I said. But even patience has an expiration date. He smiled. Let's formalize things. I'll verify ownership through the county registry, file a statement of intent, and prepare a temporary power of attorney in case you want me to execute a sale or lease. You'll retain full control. That's exactly what I need. He reached for a pen, an old Mont Blanc that gleamed under the light. Do you want to inform your son? No, I said. Let the truth inform him. The pen clicked. That sound was cleaner than any argument. He wrote slowly, deliberately. While he filled out the forms, I looked around the office. The shelves were lined with thick legal books, each one a monument to boundaries written in ink. The ticking clock on the wall was steady, patient, relentless. Arthur slid a page toward me. Sign here. This acknowledges you're the sole title holder. I signed, my name, neat and even. For the first time in months, my hand didn't shake. When he finished, he leaned forward slightly. You know, Helen, people like Veronica always underestimate quiet women. They think silence means surrender. I smiled. Then let her keep thinking that. He nodded. You'll get copies of everything within 48 hours. The file will be sealed under your authorization only. I stood. Thank you, Arthur. And one more thing. Yes? If I choose to sell, I'd like the closing date to match something poetic. He looked curious. Such as? The day their cruise returns. For the first time, Arthur's calm expression broke into a grin. I'll make sure of it. As I walked out, the morning sun cut through the lobby glass, slicing lines of gold across the floor. Outside, the breeze carried the scent of the sea and possibility. On the drive home, the world looked different, sharper, steadier, honest. When I reached the villa, I didn't unlock the door right away. I stood there for a moment, looking at the front steps they walked over every day without gratitude, the same steps Rowan built with his hands, the same ones I'd keep. Inside, I placed the signed papers on the kitchen table and ran my fingers over the notary's seal. The ink was still damp, shining faintly under the afternoon light. For the first time since they left, I smiled. Not wide, just enough. I don't want revenge, I whispered. Just clarity. And clarity, I was learning, could be just as powerful. The next week, the house felt like a confession waiting to happen. Every drawer I opened seemed to whisper what I'd ignored for years. It was noon when the first clue appeared, a letter from the county tax office addressed to Nolan Whitaker, resident of 214 Bayview Lane. I frowned. Nolan had never changed the address to his new place. Curious, I opened my laptop and checked the property records. My name, as always, appeared at the top, but right beneath it, a note I'd never seen before. Mailing contact, Nolan Whitaker and Veronica Ames Whitaker. I scrolled down. My jaw tightened. They had been using my address to receive tax benefits as primary occupants. Benefits meant for homeowners, not guests. I clicked open another tab, the cruise account. It was still under my registration. I'd set it up months ago, just to make things easier for them. Their membership tier had been upgraded recently. Royal Serenity Diamond status. I hadn't done that. My chest felt cold, not from anger but from calculation. I called the cruise line. This is Helen Whitaker. I'd like to confirm recent charges under my membership. The operator hesitated. Yes, ma'am. 2 transactions last week. Room upgrade and spa renewal. Total $628. Paid with your card on file. Interesting, I said quietly. Could you please send me a detailed receipt? Of course, ma'am. Do you want us to keep the membership active? I smiled into the receiver. Not for long. When the email arrived, I printed it. Black ink, white paper, always cleaner than tears. I read the description twice. The cruise membership, the spa package, the address, everything tied back to my information. Even thieves used to knock first. By evening, I had a folder open on the dining table. Receipts, statements, voice notes, each betrayal lined up in chronological order. I didn't feel rage. Rage was for people who still hoped to be heard. I felt something colder, steadier. My phone buzzed. A message from Veronica. "Hey Helen, just a heads up. The lawn guy is coming Friday. We put it under your account. Thanks." I stared at the screen, reading it twice, 3 times. The audacity was surgical. I typed back, "You're welcome. Send me the receipt. I'll need it for evidence." Then I hit delete instead of send. Some words are meant to stay private until they become statements. I took the phone, scrolled to Arthur's number, and hit call. "Adler Law," his assistant answered. "Tell Mr. Adler I'm ready to proceed," I said. When Arthur came on the line, his tone was calm. "Helen, I expected your call." "You were right," I said. "Silence isn't surrender, it's surveillance." He chuckled softly. "What did you find?" "They've been using my address to file taxes, my cruise account to shop, and my patients to decorate their life. I have everything in writing." "Good. Document it all. We'll file a declaration of misuse and notify the registry. Keep copies of every message." "I already did." "That's why I like working with you," he said. "You don't get loud, you get thorough." When we hung up, the house was quiet again. I sat at the table, surrounded by papers that looked more like verdicts than documents. Through the window, the sky was fading to silver. The waves beyond the garden moved like slow applause. I picked up the spa receipt and placed it on top of the pile. "You wanted luxury, Veronica," I murmured. "Let's see how you like accountability." The sound of the clock filled the room. Tick, tick, tick. Not time passing, but justice approaching. I sealed the folder, wrote one word on the cover in neat letters, "Evidence." Then I turned off the light and left the room, letting the house keep its secrets for one more night. Because tomorrow, those secrets would start talking for me. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The house was still, the kind of silence that holds its breath before a storm. I sat at the kitchen table, the folder labeled "Evidence" in front of me, a pen resting beside it. The tide outside was pulling back. Even the ocean seemed to understand what was coming. I opened the folder one last time, scanning each page, the tax letters, the cruise charges. The message from Veronica about the lawn guy. I organized them by date, stapled each group, and wrote small notes in the margin. Pattern, intent, fraud. At 7 sharp, I called Arthur. "Good morning, Helen," he answered. "I was expecting you." "Good," I said, "because I'm ready." "Ready for what exactly?" "For distance," I replied. "They wanted space. I'll give them miles." Arthur paused for half a second, just enough to smile without sound. "Then we proceed quietly. I'll prepare the temporary title transfer to my custodial trust. You'll retain full ownership, but legally, you'll be invisible. If they try to access anything, they'll hit a wall." "That's exactly what I want," I said. "You're certain?" he asked. "Once I move the documents, you'll be the only one authorized to sell." "That's the point." He sighed, but not out of hesitation, out of respect. "All right, Helen. I'll start today. Do you want me to handle the sale as well?" "Yes. Find a discreet buyer. No signs. No agents who talk too much. Cash offer, clean closing, 2 weeks. The day their cruise returns." There was a pause on the line. "Poetic as always." "I prefer accurate," I said. Arthur chuckled softly. "You'll receive the timeline in an hour." After we hung up, I took a blank sheet of paper and drew 2 columns. One titled "Then," one titled "Now." Then, Sunday dinners. Laughter. My name on every check. Now, locked passwords, insults wrapped in perfume. My name still on the deed. Under "Now," I wrote one final line, "Justice by distance." By 9, I had a timeline mapped out. Week 1, document transfer. Week 2, sale execution. Week 3, closure. Everything in order, everything clean. As I packed the documents into a new envelope, my phone buzzed. A message from Veronica. "Hi, Helen. The pool filter broke again. Can you call the repair guy? You know his number." I stared at the screen, then typed 3 words. Not my problem. I deleted them, smiling instead. No need to announce war when silence already wins it. At 10, I drove to the post office and sent Arthur the originals by certified mail. The clerk asked, "Anything valuable inside?" I looked at her and said, "Only truth." Back home, I brewed coffee and sat by the window watching the water. Every ripple felt like a plan in motion. The afternoon passed quietly. I cleaned the porch, folded towels, trimmed the garden. Every small act felt deliberate, like clearing a stage before the final act. When the sun began to set, the light hit the framed photo of Rowan by the bookshelf. He was smiling, sleeves rolled up, sun in his eyes. I could almost hear him. "Protect what you built." "I am," I whispered, in silence, just like you taught me. That night, I spread the blueprints of my villa on the table. I traced the layout with my finger, the kitchen, the porch, the master bedroom, every corner where I had once hosted them, fed them, sheltered them. I circled each one and wrote beside it, "Paid, owned, mine." When I was done, I folded the paper and placed it inside the folder marked Final. I looked at the clock. 10:32. My hand brushed the cool metal of my house key, the same one Veronica had once called old-fashioned. "They wanted distance," I said aloud, echoing my own thought from earlier. "Let's give them miles." The room was dim, but I didn't turn on the light. I didn't need brightness to see clearly anymore. Outside, the tide had come back in. The sound of the waves filled the house, steady, unhurried, certain. The plan was simple. The plan was mine, and for the first time in years, I slept without fear. 3 days later, I heard her heels before I saw her. That rhythm, sharp, fast, self-important. I didn't bother opening the door. She did it herself, as always. "Knock next time," I said without looking up. "Oh, relax," Veronica answered. "It's not like you have secrets." She stood in the doorway wearing white linen and the kind of smile people use when they think they're winning. Sunglasses still on, purse still open, voice still sweet. "I was nearby," she said, "and thought I'd check on you. Make sure you weren't too lonely without us." "Lonely?" I closed my book. "Not even close." She laughed, that perfect rehearsed laugh that doesn't reach the eyes. "Well, Nolan worries. He says you've been acting strange." "Strange?" I repeated. "That's his word for independent." She walked around the room like a real estate agent, brushing her fingers across the furniture. "You know, this house feels old, heavy. Maybe it's time to let go." "Of what?" she shrugged. "Of all this. The space, the responsibility. We've been thinking, maybe you could transfer the deed, and we could handle things, keep it in the family." I stared at her. "In the family? The same family that left me at the dock?" Her smile stiffened. "You're still hurt about that? It was just a trip, Helen." "No," I said. "It was a statement." She dropped her purse onto the counter with a soft thud. "You always dramatize everything. That's your problem. You cling to things that don't matter anymore." I leaned back in the chair. "Funny. That's exactly what thieves say before they get caught." Her expression changed. Small, quick, defensive. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I said. "You've been using my address for tax returns, my account for your luxury spa, and now you want my house." She blinked, then smiled again, wider, emptier. "You're confused. Nolan and I manage the finances now. You're retired, remember?" "I'm retired," I said softly. "Not blind." For a moment, silence. Only the sound of the wind pressing against the window. Veronica crossed her arms. "You're jealous. Admit it. I have what you lost. A husband, a family, a life. I stood up slowly. I lost my husband, yes, but not my dignity. That landed like a slap, the kind you don't hear but feel. She scoffed. You think dignity pays bills? No, I said, but it pays attention. She rolled her eyes. You really should be careful with your tone, Helen. You sound bitter. I sound awake, I replied. Veronica moved closer, her perfume thick and cold. You know what your real problem is? You can't stand that I replaced you. You used to be the center of Nolan's world. Now you're just background noise. I smiled. Background noise has a way of echoing longer than applause. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, the first crack in her control. I walked to the table, picked up the blue folder Arthur had sent back, the one stamped title certification. I set it down between us. This, I said, tapping the cover, is the sound of boundaries. She stared at it, frowning. What's that supposed to mean? It means the next time you come here uninvited, you'll need permission from the owner. I am family, she snapped. And I'm the one who signs the checks, I said. So technically, I own the family. Her mouth opened again, searching for a weapon she no longer had. I poured myself tea, letting the quiet stretch between us. Steam filled the space where her words failed. You think you scare me? She asked finally. No, I said. But I fascinate you, because I'm everything you pretend to be, composed, solvent, and unbothered. Her cheeks flushed. She grabbed her purse. Enjoy your little victory, Helen. This isn't over. I took a slow sip. Slow? Oh, it's over. You just haven't read the paperwork yet. She turned, heels striking the floor harder than before. At the door, she paused. You'll regret pushing us away. Regret? I smiled. Regret is for people who don't plan ahead. She left without closing the door. The wind did it for her. When the sound of her car faded down the street, I exhaled. The air inside the house felt new again. Light, deliberate, mine. I walked to the window and watched the trees shift under the afternoon sun. For the first time, I didn't feel like the old woman she tried to paint me as. I felt like the architect of consequence. By Thursday, the house had gone quiet again. Not peaceful, strategic, the kind of quiet that waits. I placed a new brass key on the counter, its shine cut through the morning light like a decision. The locksmith, a man named Reed, wiped his hands and said, You sure you want every lock replaced? Every single one, I said. Front, back, garage, storage. He nodded. You've had problems? Not yet, I said. That's what I'm fixing. When he left, the air smelled of metal and rain. I turned the new key once, slow, deliberate. It clicked like punctuation at the end of a long sentence. Minutes later, my phone lit up. Veronica. I didn't answer. The message came anyway. Why did the gardener say he couldn't get in? We're paying for maintenance, remember? I typed back, No, you were using my name. The account's closed. Then I deleted it. Silence is always better in writing than words on a screen. At noon, she called again. I let it ring. On the third attempt, I picked up. What's going on, Helen? She demanded. Why is the code not working? I changed it, I said. Without telling us? You don't live here. Her voice went sharp. We've been managing this house for months. No, I said softly. You've been occupying it. There's a difference. She laughed, but it cracked in the middle. You're being childish. I'm being legal. There was silence, then the sound of wind on her end. I pictured her standing somewhere expensive, holding a drink she didn't pay for. You really think this changes anything? She said. People my age build empires, Helen. You build walls. Empires collapse, I said. Walls stand. She hissed out a breath. You're bitter. I'm prepared. God, you're unbelievable, she snapped. You think money replaces love. I smiled into the receiver. You think love replaces honesty. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then the call cut off. I put the phone down and exhaled. The rain outside had stopped. The sky turned white, clean. An hour later, her car pulled into the driveway. I watched through the blinds as she stormed to the porch, hair perfect, temper not. She banged on the door. "Helen, open up! You can't lock me out of our house!" I opened the window instead. "Your house?" I asked calmly. She spun toward my voice. "You can't do this!" "We have things inside." "Correction," I said. "You left things inside. There's a legal term for that. Abandonment." "Don't play lawyer with me." "Don't play owner with me," I replied. She crossed her arms. "You're insane. People will talk." "Let them," I said. "At least they'll be talking about the truth." She stepped closer to the door. "I'm warning you." "Warnings work best before consequences," I said, and closed the window. Her voice muffled through the glass. "You'll regret this." The rain started again, soft but certain. I stood there, listening to it drown her footsteps as she walked away. When the sound faded, I turned the new key in the lock again. Click. Final. Beautiful. I made tea. The steam rose slowly, curling in the air like relief. I sat at the kitchen table and wrote 3 words on a fresh page in my notebook. House reclaimed. Official. Outside, the garden shimmered under the rain. The wind carried a faint echo of the sea. I took a long breath, steady and full. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel heavy. It felt whole. I whispered to the room. They wanted control. I gave them consequence. The clock ticked, the tea cooled, and silence settled again. Not empty, but earned. The next morning the phone rang just once before I knew who it was. Beatrice never called without reason. She was the kind of woman who saved her words for Judgment Day. And most days, that day was me. I answered anyway. "Morning, Bea." Her voice was soft, rehearsed. "Helen, I've been hearing things. From Nolan, from the church group. What on earth are you doing down there?" "Breathing," I said. "Don't be glib," she scolded. "You've changed the locks, sold your house, cut off your family. It doesn't sound very Christian." I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. "Neither does betrayal." She sighed loudly. "You always find a way to make yourself the victim." "Funny," I said. "I thought paying someone's mortgage made me a benefactor." "Helen, listen to yourself," she continued. "Family isn't about transactions. Tell that to the ones who only called when the bills were due." There was a pause, sharp as a breath held too long. "This bitterness of yours, it isn't godly," she whispered finally. I leaned back, watching the light shift across the kitchen tiles. "Which part isn't godly, Bea? The betrayal or the receipt?" She gasped softly, the kind of gasp you hear at funerals when truth gets too close. "You can't live like this, with anger. It'll eat you alive." "Anger burns," I said. "Justice sustains." "Oh, Helen." Her tone dropped, a practiced pity. "You've always been dramatic. You can't just go around punishing people because they hurt your feelings." "I didn't punish anyone," I said. "I just stopped rewarding bad behavior." Her silence was long, heavy. You could almost hear the cross on her wall turning away from me. "You've become cold," she said finally. "I became observant," I corrected. She hesitated. "You know Nolan feels awful." "Does he?" I asked. "Or does he feel the consequence?" "Helen, he's your son." "Yes, and I'm his mother, not his backup plan." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air hummed with something that wasn't anger but distance, the kind that never closes again. Finally she said, "You sound proud." "I sound free," I said. Her voice cracked a little. "You used to pray with me on Sundays." "I still do," I replied. "Only now I pray for peace, not permission." There was a quiet click on the other end, the kind of silence that means she's shaking her head. "You'll regret this someday, Helen." "I already did," I said. "That's why I fixed it." When the line went dead, I sat there for a while, letting the words settle like dust after a storm. I wasn't angry at Beatrice. She was just saying what everyone else was too polite to say. In her world, forgiveness meant surrender. In mine, it meant distance. The kettle whistled. I poured another cup of tea. stronger this time, and watched the steam curl upward, soft and certain. Through the window, the afternoon light touched the edge of the sold sign still waiting to be collected. The gold letters gleamed in the sun like proof that faith sometimes wears ink and signatures instead of halos. I whispered to the empty room, "She calls it bitterness. I call it boundary." Then I smiled, faint but steady. Because for the first time, I didn't feel like explaining. The world outside went on, cars passing, gulls circling, the ocean breathing its slow rhythm. But inside, everything was still. Still, but not stagnant. Still, like after a verdict has been read. The cup in my hand felt warm, steady, earned. I thought of my sister's last words. "You'll regret this someday," and laughed softly. I already did, B. I already did. The next morning started like any other. Quiet, methodical, tea, sunlight, the soft hum of the fridge. But when I opened my laptop, the piece cracked. There it was, an email forwarded to me by mistake. The subject line read, "Plan for Helen." I clicked. The thread was between Veronica and someone named Dr. Palmer. Their words glowed on the screen, sharp as knives. "If we can get her evaluated, we can argue mental decline. Once she's deemed unfit, the house transfers easily. She's fragile, emotional, easy to frame. Nolan agrees it's for the best." My hands froze on the keyboard. For the first time in months, I felt my pulse rise. Not from fear, but fury sharpened to ice. Fragile, emotional, easy to frame. They were plotting to erase me completely, not just from their lives, from the law. I scrolled again. Veronica had attached a draft letter ready for a doctor to sign. A fake consultation. A lie with a letterhead. I whispered the words out loud, just to taste the audacity. Unfit for independent management. The sentence hung in the air like poison. The next line read, "Once she's declared incompetent, we can handle the sale discreetly. Arthur will never know." Arthur, my lawyer. They had even tried to drag his name into their fantasy of control. I leaned back, staring at the screen. For a moment, everything went silent, even the waves outside. Then slowly, I smiled. The kind of smile that belongs to someone who just found her weapon. I hit print. The machine hummed, spitting out page after page of their arrogance. I slid each one into a clear plastic sleeve, labeled them carefully. Fraud, intent, defamation. My phone buzzed. Nolan again. I let it ring, then pressed play on his voicemail. "Mom, listen. Veronica's been worried about you. She thinks you've been overwhelmed. Maybe we should talk to someone. Professionally." I laughed softly. "Professionally? Oh, she's already ahead of you." He kept talking. "We just want what's best for you, okay? Don't make this harder than it has to be." I replayed the line twice. "Don't make this harder." It sounded rehearsed. Something she'd written for him. I spoke to the empty room. "You think manipulation sounds like concern. It doesn't." Then I opened a new email. The address, Arthur Adler. Subject, "For your records." I attached the entire thread, every lie, every forged plan. I didn't add commentary. The evidence spoke louder than any outrage could. Before hitting send, I read it one last time and whispered, "Unfit? Maybe for your lies, not for the law." Click, sent. 10 minutes later, Arthur called. His voice was calm, but there was a shadow of disbelief beneath it. "Helen, this is criminal." "Yes," I said simply. "And they wrote the confession themselves." "I'll handle it quietly," he said. "Chain of custody, timestamps, metadata, everything admissible." "Good," I replied. "I'm done speaking their language. From now on, I'll let paper talk." He was silent for a moment, then said, "You're colder than I remember." "I'm focused," I said. "Cold is just the temperature of truth." When we hung up, I closed the laptop. The room felt strangely lighter, as if every lie that had hung over it had just burned away. Outside, the tide was low. The sand looked endless, clean and untouched. I poured the rest of my tea into the sink and said softly, "They wanted me silent. They'll get exactly that, just not the way they planned." The wind rattled the window slightly, like a nod from the sea, and for the first time, I didn't feel insulted. I felt documented. The day I signed the papers, the sky looked almost too blue, the kind of blue that doesn't care what you've lost or what you've learned. Arthur sat across from me in his office, a calm wall of professionalism. He slid the documents forward, one after another. "You understand, Helen. Once you sign, it's final." "I do," I said. My voice didn't shake. "Final is what I came for." He nodded slowly. "The sale is clean. Cash offer. No public record until after closing. Transfer goes straight into your private trust." I looked at the first page. The numbers glowed back. $5.1 million. 5 years of patience. 1 signature of freedom. I picked up the pen. "They took the cruise," I said. "I'll take my freedom." The pen moved like muscle memory. Name, date, initials. Each stroke felt lighter than the one before. When I finished, Arthur tapped the final page. "You'll receive confirmation once the funds clear. 2 business days." "That's enough time," I said. He leaned back in his chair. "You know, you could buy another villa. Something smaller. Quieter." I smiled faintly. "I don't need another house, Arthur. I just need a door that only opens when I choose." He didn't argue. He never did. I stood, smoothing the page edges with one hand. "Send me a copy," I said. "Of course." As I left, the light in the lobby hit my hands, ink still fresh on my fingers. I held them up to the sun and whispered, "Proof." Outside, the air smelled of ocean salt and justice. Back home, I poured a glass of water and placed it next to the teacup that had waited all morning. 2 halves of the same ritual. One for the woman who endured, one for the woman who decided. I walked through each room slowly. The kitchen, once filled with voices that weren't mine. The hallway, lined with photos that had already lost meaning. The living room, still echoing laughter that never belonged. Every wall knew the story. Every doorframe remembered the footsteps of people who thought ownership was love. I touched the mantel, whispered to Rowan's picture, "It's done. I kept what you built safe, even from our own." The sea wind came through the open window, soft but insistent, as if it had been waiting for that line. My phone buzzed once, a text from Arthur. "Funds received, transfer complete, congratulations." No confetti, no applause, just numbers and silence. Exactly how freedom should sound. I walked outside. The garden shimmered under the afternoon sun. A small sold sign leaned against the porch rail, ready to be taken down. The letters gleamed gold against white, like closure carved in daylight. For a moment, I stood there in the stillness, breathing in the salt air. Not proud, not sad, just clear. They thought they'd taken everything from me, but what they really gave me was distance, and distance, when earned, feels like peace. I picked up the key from the table and turned it once more in the lock, not to close, but to mark the end. The house clicked softly, like a bow at the end of a performance. I whispered to the empty rooms, "It's your turn to rest." Then I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. No glance back, no hesitation. The sky stretched wide and unbothered. The sea below shimmered like it knew. I smiled once, small and final. "They took the cruise," I said again, this time to the wind. "I took my freedom." And the ocean, in its calm endlessness, carried the line away, as if it agreed. It was the Sunday after their cruise. The sky looked heavy, like it knew what was about to happen. I was already awake, sitting by the window with my tea when I heard the familiar engine. The car pulled into the driveway, tires crunching against the gravel that wasn't theirs anymore. From where I sat, I could see them, Veronica first, in white again, sunglasses too large for her face, dragging a suitcase that screamed importance. Nolan followed, shoulders slumped, eyes small. They didn't knock. They tried the door. It didn't open. Veronica's voice sliced the air. "Helen, the lock's jammed again." I didn't answer. I waited, sipping my tea. She knocked harder. "Helen, we just got back. Open the door." Still nothing. Then came the sound I'd been waiting for. The gasp. "Wait! Nolan, look!" Through the window, her finger pointed to the front yard. The sold sign stood bright against the grass, shining like a mirror for her face. She laughed once, short and nervous. "That has to be a mistake." Nolan's silence said otherwise. She turned back to the door, banging now. "Helen, what is this?" I stood and walked slowly to the window. The teacup was still warm in my hand. From behind the glass, I watched them. Two people who had mistaken comfort for ownership. I opened the window halfway. "Morning," I said calmly. Veronica spun around. "You sold the house?" "I did," I said. "You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted. "My name was on the deed. Remember?" Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Nolan stepped forward, voice trembling. "Mom, why? We were gone for 10 days." "That's exactly why," I said. Veronica's face twisted. "Do you know how humiliating this is? The neighbors can see." "I imagine they can," I said. "It's called accountability." "You're insane," she hissed. "No," I said. "Just legal." A few of the neighbors had indeed stepped outside. Mrs. Vaughn across the street, phone in hand, pretending to water her plants while recording. Veronica's eyes flicked toward her, then back at me. "You think this makes you look good? You just sold your own home out of spite." "No," I said quietly. "I sold it out of principle." She pointed at Nolan. "You did this to your son." I looked at him, steady. "No, I did this for him. Maybe now he'll remember who paid for his roof before he built castles in other people's heads." He looked down. His lips trembled like he wanted to speak but couldn't. Veronica crossed her arms, raising her voice. "We're still moving in. This is still our house." "Not anymore," I said. "The papers cleared Friday." She took a step closer. "You can't lock us out." "I didn't lock you out," I said. "You walked out." The silence that followed was the kind that stings. Even the gulls above seemed to pause mid-cry. Veronica turned toward the street, suddenly aware of the quiet cameras, the neighbors' eyes, the small crowd forming. "You're humiliating us," she yelled. I took a slow sip of tea. "No, dear, you're doing that all by yourself." Her phone rang, shrill and desperate. She glanced at the screen, cursed, then hurled it into her purse. "You'll regret this, Helen. You'll regret every second of this circus." I tilted my head. "Funny. I remember you saying the same thing about the cruise." Nolan finally spoke. "Mom, please. Can we talk about this inside?" "This isn't my inside anymore," I said softly, "and it never was yours." Behind him, a delivery van slowed down to stare at the commotion. Mrs. Vaughn whispered something to the couple next door. One of them was filming. The world was watching quietly, just the way justice likes it. Veronica grabbed Nolan's arm. "Let's go. She's lost it." I called after her. "Oh, one more thing." She turned halfway, glaring. I lifted a small envelope and waved it once. "This is from my attorney. You'll find copies of your tax misuse and that little mental unfit letter. Send my regards to Dr. Palmer." Her face drained of color. How did you—" "Email," I said. "Yours." The neighbors murmured. Someone laughed quietly. Veronica stared at me for a long moment, then stormed toward the car. "Come on, Nolan." He didn't move. "Nolan!" she snapped. He looked at me, eyes wet but steady. "Is it true?" "Yes," I said. "Every line." He nodded once, slow. Then, "Maybe we deserve it," Veronica gasped. "Are you serious?" He didn't answer. He just looked tired. She stomped back to the car, slammed the door, and sped off. tires squealing, pride unraveling behind her. Nolan stayed there, standing in the driveway, the wind playing with his shirt. For a long time he said nothing. Then softly, "You really sold it?" "I did," I said. "Cleanly, quietly, legally." He nodded. "Where will you go?" "Somewhere smaller," I said. "Somewhere mine." He swallowed. I don't know what to say." "Then don't," I said gently. "You've said enough." He looked down once more, then turned and walked away. No drama, no words, just distance, finally earned. When the car disappeared down the road, I closed the window and let the silence fall back into place. The teacup was empty, but the house, though no longer mine, felt cleaner than it ever had. I whispered to the fading sound of engines, "You wanted family only. Now you have it." And for the first time since the dock, the air around me felt light enough to breathe. 2 days later, her voice found me again, not through the phone, but through the screen. I wasn't looking for it. I had just finished unpacking in my new place, a smaller cottage overlooking the sea. White curtains, wood floors, peace. Then, as I scrolled through the news feed, the thumbnail appeared. Her face, crying. The title read, "My evil mother-in-law stole our home." I clicked. There she was. Veronica, on a live stream, sitting in her car. Makeup running, tears rehearsed. The camera angle tilted just enough to make her look helpless. "She sold it behind our backs," she sobbed, voice cracking perfectly on cue. "We came home from our family cruise, and she'd sold everything. My clothes, my daughter's toys, my whole life." The comments flew in fast. "OMG, that's horrible. Sue her. How can someone do that to their own son?" I watched quietly, tea in hand. Veronica kept going. "She's old and bitter. She's been unstable for years. I tried to help her, but she turned against us. She even forged documents." Another flood of sympathy. Emojis, hearts, rage. And then one familiar voice in the chat. "Mrs. Vaughn. I live across the street. That woman told the truth. They left her alone, then used her money. She just took back what was hers." Veronica froze. You could see the panic flicker in her eyes. The moment she realized the crowd was shifting. Another comment appeared, followed by another. "Didn't her name stay on the deed? Wait, there's proof of tax fraud." I saw the video. The old lady handled it with class. Veronica blinked fast, trying to hold her composure. "People will believe anything," she said, forcing a smile. "Don't listen to lies. But the comments kept coming. "She was your family until you sold her for a cruise. You called her insane. She called a lawyer. Maybe respect is cheaper than luxury spas." Her face changed again. No more tears. Just fury. "You all don't understand," she snapped. "She's manipulative. Her connection cut for a second. The screen froze, her mouth mid-word, her eyes mid-blame. When it came back, the viewers had doubled. "Veronica," a voice from outside the camera said. Nolan's voice. She turned. "Not now." But the camera picked him up in the reflection of the windshield. His expression was pale, wrecked. "Maybe it's enough," he said quietly. "Maybe stop." "Stop?" she hissed. "She ruined us." "No," he said. "We did that ourselves." The comments exploded. "Son finally grew a spine." "Good for him." "Accountability looks good on you, Nolan." She stared at him, stunned, realizing the betrayal she couldn't control, the one she'd earned. The camera shook. The feed stuttered. You could hear her voice breaking off screen. "Turn it off, Nolan, now!" He didn't. The live stream ended with a sound that wasn't crying or shouting, just silence, then the faint click of a door closing. I sat back in my chair, the sea outside whispering against the rocks. I hadn't smiled all day, but that moment pulled one from me. Small, measured, satisfied. The internet moved fast. Within hours, the video was clipped, shared, commented on. Karma in real time. She called it family. He called it fraud. Justice served over Wi-Fi. I didn't add a comment. I didn't have to. By evening, my phone buzzed. Arthur again. It's everywhere, he said. You've become a quiet celebrity. I laughed softly. For doing what, Arthur? Drinking tea and signing papers? For surviving with grace, he said. That's rarer than you think. After we hung up, I stepped outside. The sunset stretched in gold and coral, calm and unapologetic. The waves rolled slow, like they'd been watching the whole story unfold and had decided justice was just another tide. I sat on the porch and replayed the sound in my head. Not Veronica's cries, but the line that stopped her cold. She was your family until you sold her for a cruise. The internet had turned that line into captions, quotes, wallpapers. I didn't write it, but I felt it. Deep. I poured one more cup of tea and whispered to the sea, they needed the world to see me weak. Instead, the world saw me quiet. The horizon burned brighter, as if to agree. Behind me, the cottage creaked softly, wood adjusting to peace. No applause, no speeches. Just the kind of silence that finishes the story for you. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the sound of the waves fill the rest of the space she used to occupy in my head. Justice didn't always shout. Sometimes it streamed live. 6 months passed. The ocean had changed colors 3 times since then. Blue, then silver, then something between both, the color of peace. My new home sat on a small hill overlooking the shore. 1 bedroom, 1 kitchen, 1 quiet life. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. I woke early each morning, opened the curtains, let the light spill across the floor. The air smelled of salt and jasmine, no voices, no tension, just the sound of waves keeping time. Some nights I still dreamed of the old villa, its long hallway, the ticking clock, the echo of footsteps that never belonged there. But the dreams didn't sting anymore. They just passed, like old mail you don't need to open. On the counter sat the same teacup I'd carried through every chapter of this story. A thin crack ran down its side now. It didn't bother me. Some things break, but stay useful. They just stop pretending to be perfect. I made my tea, opened my laptop, and found an email waiting. The sender's name made me pause. Nolan, no subject line, just 3 words inside. I'm sorry, Mom. No explanations, no excuses. Just those 3 words, sitting in their own silence. I read them twice, then a 3rd time, not because I doubted them, but because I wanted to feel the weight of something that simple. Then, without hesitation, I moved the cursor to the corner and clicked delete. Not out of hate, out of closure. Some forgiveness doesn't need delivery. Outside, the wind picked up. The curtains swayed like they were nodding. I stepped onto the porch, barefoot, tea in hand. The sea stretched endless and forgiving. I whispered, quiet doesn't mean weak. It means finished talking. The words floated out into the wind, soft but certain. They didn't echo. They didn't need to. A gull crossed the horizon, white against gold. The tide rolled in and retreated again, as steady as my heartbeat. For the first time in years, I realized I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Not for my choices. Not for my peace. The world had seen enough noise. Mine would end in stillness. I sat on the wooden step, the paint warm from the morning sun. Somewhere down the road, I knew life was still rushing. Bills, gossip, new fights to start and lose. But here, everything had slowed to truth. A small envelope sat beside me, Arthur's final letter. Inside was the trust statement, the last update. The balance printed neatly in black ink, nothing missing. Nothing owed. I smiled. You'd be proud, Rowan, I said softly. I protected what you built. A faint breeze answered, brushing my hair like a quiet approval. Behind me, the kettle clicked off automatically, the sound of something finishing exactly when it should. I watched the horizon until it blurred into light. Some stories end with applause. Mine ended with understanding. Because justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just breathes. Calm, even, done. I took one last sip of tea. The flavor was strong, a little bitter, perfectly honest. Then I stood, walked back inside, and left the door slightly open, just enough for the wind to come through. The curtains lifted gently, the house exhaled, and that was enough. End of story. My son excluded me. My wife prefers family only. A story of betrayal turned into boundaries, a story where silence didn't surrender, it conquered, a story where justice was quiet but absolute.